of leaders. At this moment, once again, the two main political rallies happening simultaneously, one in Afraha Stadium that is in Nakuru, and that is going to be Jubilee's last major political rally. President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to be there any moment from now, as his supporters are still getting entertained there. And right here in the capital, Nairobi, at Uhuru Park, NASA's presidential candidate Raila Odinga and of course the members of the Pentagon, they are expected any moment to address their supporters. What will their message be? What are they going to tell their supporters, even as we now just count hours before we go to the polls? Now, back in studio, Brian, you had to react to something Abdullahi raised. As much as you react to that, and there's something you mentioned about, the last message these politicians will have for their respective supporters. And it's all about turnout.
Absolutely. It's about turnout. And just to delve on the previous discussion, there's another component which has been very tricky to pollsters. And this is the component which includes the people who get swayed during the last minutes. And this is a component that's very hard to capture by pollsters, because I'm talking out of experience, because I ran for parliament in 2013 in my constituency, Kaiti. And there are those who change...
Were you a victim?
I'm a victim. There are those who change...
It will be interesting how you found that, huh?
Oh, yes. There are those who change their minds during the last, very few hours to the ballot because of other factors. And of course, money in our country, of course, is a factor, because I come from a community which believes to whoever, came to your head during those last minutes, the issues of money, the issues of food distribution, those are some of the resources that tilt the scales and, completely change the game.
When you talk about last minutes, is it weeks to the polls, days, hours?
No, the campaigns are done at night.
The last night.
The moment, so campaigns have been declared, no campaigns. Now candidates go door to door at night. Yeah. They burn the midnight oil trying to convince voters, and they come there with money, they come with the food, and they change the minds completely of those who had decided.
Which is wrong.
Which is very wrong. And this is something that perhaps changed the American landscape, because pollsters were actually giving Clinton a lot of edge over Trump. But maybe those few hours, few moments actually tilted the scales completely. And when we were expecting for Clinton to be declared the winner, things changed and Trump was declared. So you cannot rule out, although of course America, there's no money issue and the food distribution, but there are other factors which are very unique with their country. But again, going back to this situation, of course, there's something that before it escapes from my mind, Yusuf, if you may allow me, is that right now as you move around Nairobi and other environs, I would urge candidates to make sure that their supporters exercise refrain. Because if you go to town Nairobi right now, it's looking pretty ugly because of the way the supporters are behaving, the way they might lose voters, while at the same time they might be thinking that they are convincing people to vote for them, but their conduct itself is something that perhaps is something they need to observe, because they are brushing people in the wrong way, they are, blocking roads, people cannot pass even comfortably in the name of campaigning for the last minutes in terms of their candidates. So that might even work negatively for them. So it's just a question.
Let's talk about the turnout now.
Now, in terms of turnout, of course, these crowds, unfortunately in Kenya, we do not have softwares which can measure crowdometer in terms of who had the biggest crowds. But again, crowds do not resonate in terms of votes. What they do is only that they change the mindsets of people whom perhaps might have voted for them, and perhaps it might work for them. But scientifically speaking, it does not. Nobody has ever done that kind of research and come up with findings that says crowds, resonating to votes.
Okay, Kissinger, actually I'm talking about the turnout on the actual voting day. There are those who said that Raila Odinga presidency, in 2013, what cost him was voter turnout. People didn't come out in large numbers to vote for him back in the year 2013.
Exactly. And the issue of voter turnout, you have to link it directly to the issue of registration and civic voter education. Now, those are the things that leads you to voter turnout.
Yes.
First of all, there must be registration. Secondly, which has been done. Secondly, there must be civic and voter education, which was done by the IEBC. Now, empowering these people to go and participate in the vote. Now, go by statistics. In the last election, 2013, we had 13.4 million registered voters. Now, we have 19.6 and something registered voters, an increase of about half a million.
Something, yes.
Now, that's about 36% increase in voting. Now, with that indication, it just shows that there's no voter apathy. Number two, that people are willing to participate in the electoral process. So what are we expecting now? What we are expecting is a huge voter turnout coming the next election on a Tuesday by going by those numbers. Because 5 million people didn't just take voters card for the sake of taking voters card. There was a reason why they went and took the voters card. So I'm expecting a very huge turnout.
And most of these are first-time voters.
First-time voters and young people. Actually, this election, where we are missing the point is that this election is going to be a swing vote in terms of the youth participating in the election. This is where we are all missing the point. This
Not the traditional battles.
No. And number two, there is no
That's interesting.
suit that we are going to see in this election. Very spotty in terms of the suits. Those guys who are going to vote. We are going to see completely what people are calling smart casual. Smart casual. You could see in Nairobi, for example, the senator losing, but the opposition person winning. So these are very interesting things. But the voter turnout is going to be very huge. But the organization that IEBC has done in terms of the voters' processes in the polling station is very encouraging, because they're limiting to 700 people. So it means it's easy to manage 700 people queuing in a polling station.
Alphabetically.
Alphabetically.
Yes.
Alphabetically.
So even within the 700,
Exactly.
you can come, you have your alphabet, you can go there, you can go there. So
Exactly.
it's fairly organized.
So that's easy for people to
That's
vote.
easy, yeah.
John, turnout. It should be key today.
Yeah, turnout would be very key. You know, I still want to go back to the issue of the crowds. Earlier on, Raila is the one who was known to do very nice crowds. When it came to issue of crowd mobilization, Raila would get it right. But it seems like these other guys, either they have learned or they have upped their game. I think from 2013, the Jubilee side seems to be very professional in terms of how they conduct their campaigns. If you look at even the kind of advertisement they have been doing, they look like they get to know exactly, I don't know, I think it's a factor of research. Sometimes you get to know exactly what it is that you want to communicate to the people. And they also seem to have caught up in terms of the crowds now. They're able to mobilize massively. And so it is no longer... I don't think it's any longer a competitive advantage to have a bigger crowd, because all of them will have big crowds anyway. So that's why then we have to focus so much on the issue of the turnout on the actual day.
Exactly.
And the issue of turnout, what I would want to say is that if you look at 2013, in areas which were stronghold for the two leading candidates, that is Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, they had well over 90%. Average in terms of turnout. So if you go to Homa Bay, Siaya, and you go to all the Nyanza, Luo Nyanza counties, you find that they had very huge turnout.
That cannot be said of the coast and western
That cannot be
regions.
said of the other areas. If you go again to central Kenya, if you go to Murang'a, if you go to Nyeri, Nyandarua, those again, they were doing 93, 94. And actually the leading one...
And that is practical, right?
That is practical,
having a
of course. That is it.
90% and
That is-
above turnout.
Oh, it's practical for
Okay.
sure. For those two areas, those two regions, that is Nyanza, Luo Nyanza, and the Kikuyu Central. That's really practical, in my opinion.
Yes.
Now, when you come to these other areas now, where we have the other principals or the other candidates who are supporting the main two candidates, you find now the turnout again comes down to around between 85, depending on who is so close. If you go to Kambani, for example, the turnout was coming to between 85 and 90%. If you go to Rift Valley, again, the turnout was between 85 and 90. And I'm expecting that to remain. Now, if you go to an area like
react to
Western
that,
Kenya,
Brian,
yeah, if you go to an area like Western Kenya, we had a presidential candidate. Western Kenya is known to be a laggard in terms of turning out to vote. So you find that because they had a presidential candidate, again, their turnout was fairly good. They were at an average of 84, slightly lower than the average, the national average of 86 that we had. And by the way, this was one of the highest turnouts in the world, by the way. And that is probably also why we are attracting a lot of attention from around the globe. So this time round, now that we do not have a presidential candidate, for example, in Western Kenya, I'm in doubt whether they will actually go to 84%. In Luo Nyanza, I expect it will go very high.
Yes.
In Central Kenya, I expect it to go very high. But when it comes to now Western Kenya, I have my doubts as to whether it will go to 84%.
Coincidentally, that is where opinion pollsters are saying most of the undecided
voters.
Of course, we've agreed that, you know, when it comes to turnout, 90% and above is practical. But what is not
Definitely.
practical in Kenya is getting a 98% win. So, Abdullah, basically from the opinion polls, you know, the results they've released, it's a neck-and-neck race.
Yes.
There's no room for blunder today from both sides.
That is why I keep on coming back to voter turnout. Voter turnout is destiny. And so even for this last minute, this is where you're trying to close the deal. And you hear people being told, I think, was it last week, or this week in Nakuru, where even, you know, people are saying that you'll not be able to allow, you'll not be allowed to sleep with your wives. People who are drinking, you'll not be allowed. You have to adopt someone, and that just shows that how invested everybody is, because the margins of error are extremely slim. Because these guys, they have mobilized their strongholds. Not just that, but they have also done a good job in terms of the swing vote, whether it's North Rift, whether it's South Rift, that's the Maasai, in Kisii areas, Northeastern, you don't see any of these guys taking any chance. So for me, that is why voter turnout is going to be massive. Secondly, I just wanted to make about the point about the youth. They are not a monolithic group. That is the challenge with the youth. Like, they are fairly promiscuous. They can vote in different forms, and they are not like, you know, it's a generation that you can see for presidency they can give to this person, to the other person.
Maybe we can talk in terms of manifesto. Which manifesto between, you know, NASA and Jubilee identifies well with the youth, for instance?
Nothing.
I think that's the mode of delivery.
But
Brian, I think before you react to that, just to give our viewers some update there, what you're seeing on your screen is that some of the NASA's top leadership are now making their way to Uhuru Park. That is where NASA's presidential candidate and the other top NASA guns are expected to make their final address to their supporters. That is the Raila Odinga's convoy. I believe we are yet to know who is in that convoy. We're going to know that shortly. Remember, our reporter Patrick Kamimo is keeping tabs for us on that. Those are live pictures coming away from Uhuru Park. We do expect NASA's presidential candidate to any moment from now go to that venue. I can see a convoy making its way, snaking its way through that huge crowd. Remember, that is a place that is now filled to capacity. A big number of NASA supporters in Nairobi have turned out, have turned up for this rally, which will be the final rally by the NASA outfit. Of course, Jubilee also going to hold their own final rally. And the same thing, I believe, is happening all across the country. You know, governors, senators, those who are eyeing the MP seat, as well as those, of course, who are eyeing the MCA seat, and not forgetting the woman representative position. All of them trying to make sure that they get the much-needed support before the August 8th D-Day. That is just 2 days away from now. We just have about maybe 2 hours to go before the campaigns officially closes. So we are seeing some convoy making its way through that crowd. We're still not sure who among the Pentagon members of the NASA is in that convoy, but we do expect the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, was of course the NASA's presidential candidate, to address his supporters at Uhuru Park. We're going to, of course, link up with Amimo shortly. He's going to tell us what is exactly happening on the ground. We can see Thabo Mbeki, former South African president, who is an observer, making his way to Uhuru Park. I don't know, Abdullah, what can you make of this?
I wouldn't want to read too much into it. My sense is potentially this is the last rally. He's the chief observer for AU.
Yes.
So he's just ensuring that, you know.
So this is not some sort of endorsement, right?
I'll be very careful for us to go in that direction without adequate information, because we are at the last minute where some of these things could easily be used. You know, like, we are in an ecosystem where a lot of fake news is moving around. We should be very guarded in the statements that we make.
Yes.
If that is turned against him, and heaven forbid we have a political violence, and we are looking for a mediator, the other side could easily say, look, this guy was there, and when he went there, it was a tacit, endorsement. Yes, there is a difference between, for instance, perception, the optics of this. I'm sure their comms people have thought about it, and probably maybe Mahama has gone to a Afra stadium.
Yes.
I don't know.
That's a possibility.
So we should be very guarded because.
Kakai, please.
Actually, this is when I see this happening. It reminds me. I do a lot of observation missions for African Union.
Yes.
Now, there's nothing wrong with what he's doing. I do recall that we were in Zambia in the last election, and the head of mission that time was the former president of Nigeria for the African Union, Obasanjo, and we went for the political rally that was being organized by the opposition, and it was very hilarious.
Didn't you go
But
incognito?
Now, no. What it is that you are issued as...
This is Thabo Mbeki you're talking about. You have to see.
And that was the former president of Nigeria. You are issued with a jacket, the way they are wearing.
Clearly written observer.
Behind you have observer status.
Yeah.
These are former head of mission. All he's doing is to do what? To observe. Now, it is never
And
takes...
what a better way to observe.
Exactly. And it never takes
than to
any
go to the
political
rally.
dimension where people say that this guy... no, it's just an observer status. And he never speaks. You will never speak. You have to be seen, and the presence of you being there. Now, what that does to the political rallies, it sobers them up completely. Because African Union and East African Community and COMESA and all this, they always go for former heads of state who have retired.
Statesmen.
Yes. So it really sobers you completely. So it has got nothing to do with endorsement. It has got nothing
So
to do
this
with
is normal.
It's very normal. It's
a standard
I think it's very important to clear the air.
yeah,
on
it's
that.
a standard procedure. It's very normal. Actually, you are supposed to do that. In fact, you are always asked, look for the last political rally where it's taking place, and especially if it's for the front rally, you must be there. So you will notice that in the Jubilee rally in Afra, there will be some other observers mission who are already based there.
So
And
you're
just-
saying the
just
observer mission have sat down and they've clearly, arranged so-and-so should attend
Yes,
this
it's part of
rally,
their
so-and-so should
methodology.
attend that
Yeah, it's
rally.
part of their methodology, and there's nothing wrong with that completely. You are
I think
just
it's very
observing.
important to clear there on that.
For me, just 1 second.
just-
The reason as to why I say we should be very careful is we are in a fairly polarized setup. I'm glad you've brought up the Zambia example, but people just it's very easy right now people to say anything. But I'm glad you've brought in your lived experience as an observer.
As we give Brian a chance now.
Let me say this. The essence of observation in terms of politics and elections is a changing, that dynamism in terms of changing terrain and all that. And I want to say that this guy is working with some certain terms of reference, and his TR is very clear, and maybe we do not know, or we are not privy to what that terms of reference says about his role in terms of these elections. And I want to say that, Yusuf, while it's not good for us to preempt on what he's likely to do or to behave or to say, but there's nothing wrong when an observer or the chief observer appears in such a forum and delivers a message in the context of how Africa anticipates the process to be conducted. And I want to say that it's a statement that will show that Kenya is not living in isolation, but it's part of the global village where democracy and its principles have to be observed. So, to me, I will not be surprised to see Thabo Mbeki coming with a message of cohesion. Let me wind up. I don't want to finish.
Reaction to that.
I'll say I'm not going to be
Because
surprised.
it's very important we clear
I'm saying,
the air, as Abdullah has
of
mentioned.
Of course, I'm not going to be surprised if he's given an opportunity to send
to speak.
Yes, of course. Wait a minute. Why can't you allow
as
me
you
to say?
finish,
As I finish.
please,
Because
Because
he
we have
might
a few
be
minutes
having
to
that
go.
package from Africa as a continental body where he wants to cement the position of the country and the need to observe certain norms, certain practices that would depict Kenya as part of the global village.
It's something, of course, he can easily do in a press
Absolutely.
briefing.
So I cannot rule it out.
Let's give Kakai a chance and then we'll come to you, John.
Let me clarify
Let's
this.
give him a chance and then we'll come to you.
Observer missions and this kind of people who do observations. And as I'm saying, I've done observations before. And
Yes.
we are found in a situation whereby we have with former heads of state. And your terms of reference is very clear. You are an observer, you are going to observe. Number two, you remain neutral. Number three, you don't release any political statements in that country because it's not your country. Because you don't know who you are going, if you release a political statement, who it's going to support. The only thing you do is that you have a mission statement that you issue. And at the end of the day, you issue a report. And even these reports are normally issued when the head of state, like now Thabo Mbeki, will be back in his own country. So but they released a mission statement yesterday. So there are only two forums where you speak. When you are releasing your preliminary statement and when you are releasing your final report when you are leaving.
And the setup is key. It shouldn't be in a political
I can
rally.
tell you, it's not a methodology in any observation, and you will never see, and you will not see Thabo Mbeki talking.
But let me get John's comments.
You know, when the observers come to Kenya, even the monitoring team, one of the things that they do, and he will agree with me, and I'm happy he has also brought a very professional and expertise kind of a comment, an opinion. You know, when these observers come to observe elections, one of the things they do is that they have a meeting with the different groups, the different stakeholders, and we have seen them do that. We have seen them go to State House to have a meeting with the president. We have seen them go to different hotels to have a meeting with the opposition.
Yes.
And that has been accepted. It is a norm, is a good practice, is a standard, and I think it is positively taken. But when it comes to a political charged rally, I think the dynamics do change. You know, when we have IBC, I look at IBC like the referee. And now the referee needs to have linesmen. And I look at the observers as the linesmen. And the way I expect the referee to behave is similarly the way I would expect the linesmen to behave.
But they're not conducting the polls, they're just observers.
And that's why.
No better way of observing.
My problem comes that when you're having a political rally, I would expect that IBC, would still be observing even these political rallies that we're having, as it is still their mandate, by the way, to ensure that we are all sober and we are all propagating, the right things towards the election. And I do not expect Chebukati to go up a stage and take a seat and sit there, So I know it is not, but let me finish the point. So my issue is whether it is Mahama going to the Jubilee rally, whether it is Thabo Mbeki going to the NASA rally.
So you're saying it shouldn't be the case?
I would suggest that it is important that they go there, but I think they need to do it incognito, not in a way that it will be used by any of the political divides to their political advantage. So it needs to be done in such a way that it is
the former South African
neutral
president had a jacket written "Observe" on it. There's nothing like NASA or Jubilee.
Yeah, of course.
Quickly, as you react to that, I'll give you a chance, Brian. Next.
Is it a burning question? I can let...
No, it's not. But of course, I just want to break the point in a better way.
So generous of you.
So gentle of him, of course. Maybe my guys here are depicting me in the wrong context, perhaps, or picking me in the wrong context. What I'm saying is that I do not want to preempt on what he might be having in terms of his terms of reference on what he has been mandated by the AU. He is a statesman, and maybe perhaps it has not really augured well with what he has seen before, but I said the aspect of Kenya's position in terms of geopolitics is so important, and that's why the world is watching us on how we are going to behave, and therefore the dynamism comes in handy in the sense that he might be having a message that perhaps you cannot preempt on that. A message may be crafted in a way that Africa wants to make a statement to us, and they are using him as a statesman, to deliver that. And therefore, that's why I'm saying, I do not want to preempt on what is likely to say.
But is speaking from previous experience.
Maybe I'm right, maybe he's right.
No, it will not work.
One final moment, just clear the air on this once and for all, as we wrap up.
An observer mission has a terms of reference, and the terms of reference is to go into that country as an observer. You are not a member, you are not a registered voter in that country. And yours is to assist in observing and coming up with the proper standards and analyzing whether that country followed those standards or not. Remember, when we began, I said that Kenya is a signatory of many other statutes. And some of those statutes invite these missions to come here. These missions are not here for the sake of being here. EU is not here just for the sake of being here. Commonwealth is not here for the sake of East African Community. Is not here. EU is not here.
The job is cut out for them.
The job is cut out for them. And Kenya is a signatory to them. And we invite them. And these are diplomatic relations. And therefore, when you're in a country dealing with diplomatic relations, you have to observe. exit that country and document and say, these were good practices, these were not bad practices, please improve on this practice for the future election.
And we are in an era of fake news. You can easily see people using Thabo Mbeki's footage of him greeting NASA supporters and use it as some sort of endorsement.
I was going to say that observation must also be done in a manner not to depict observers to be supporting any part of the political divide. That's why I was very keen to insist on the issue of being incognito. You need to do it in a subtle way, but they must observe.
My brother, while I agree with you, 9 out of 10 times, it's not very difficult to pick Thabo Mbeki from a crowd. Even if he decided to go there incognito, there is no chance. There is no chance that he will not be seen. But again,
actually, we spotted him in that huge crowd.
but again, that is the nature of our politics.
Yes.
That we are, we are so divided that any small thing can be blown out of proportion. Mine is, I hope that this will not be used in that regard, and then for us to lose an opportunity to follow laid down procedure because of our own internal inadequacies, where we are suspicious, where we are afraid of our own shadows wherever we go. So I think that is the challenge. I think I want to make one final point. My one final point is with respect to when the results come out, as they will. It's not just so much the reaction of the crowd, whether they are happy they are going onto the streets, or whether they're sad that their candidate lost and they will go out onto the street. Mine is also for the police to also conduct themselves such that they facilitate assemblies rather than making it restrictive. All our laws are very clear, whether it's Public Order Act, whether it's National Police Service Act, whether it's the articles in the Constitution about assemblies. I am guaranteed for me to go onto the street, make as much noise as I want, but the police, because they have displayed all these new toys, the IGP has been very clear, we are not going to countenance any form of protest. Although he said he was quoted out of context, County Commissioner Kisumu also saw it, there will be no protest. Assemblies, peaceful assemblies, have got their place in democracy. The police should be able to facilitate, but also the people who are coming out for the assemblies should be able to follow the procedure that is giving notice, the route that they are taking, and all manner of stuff, because that is where a lot of problems comes in.
Brian, I think I should hear your final comments on this. Of course, it is a political season. We still have a few hours before the campaign window officially closes, and we do expect political temperatures to rise. The final message as we...
Of course, they are not rising. They're at boiling point now.
I think it's beyond boiling point.
It's a boiling point. And I think this is a situation where now people have to go and reflect. Now that they have been consuming the messages, they have been getting the information from the protagonists and all that, and now this is the time that they are interrogating the messages and looking at avenues where they want to make our informed choice. Of course, the most important thing for me as a person to say to Kenyans is that Kenya was there before these elections, will be there after these elections, and the beauty of it is that we have such a beautiful country that we do not want it to go to the dogs. So therefore, for me, is for everyone to observe peace and to ensure that we treat each other with that kind of respect in terms of human rights adherence to.
Kakai, I think as you make your final comment, just I would like you to zero in on the Observer debate once again, once and for all, because it's important.
Thank you very much.
Based on the experience you have.
And let me clarify this very well so that there's no perception that is lost. I have had an opportunity to work in Observer missions with AU, with East African Community, with COMESA, and with Carter Center. What I'm telling you is that Observer